afternoon, and thanks for joining us. I'm Judy Simpson. In survey after survey, money is among the top sources of stress for Americans. The key reasons for money-related stress include healthcare costs, paying for unexpected expenses, and saving for retirement. Research shows that education is the key to helping people become better money managers. So today we've called on two guests to help us all improve our financial literacy. Cindy Morgan is the Chief Marketing Officer of the New England Federal Credit Union, and alongside Cindy is Caroline Weaver. Caroline is an Assistant Academic Coordinator at the University of Vermont. Thanks so much for coming in.
Sure.
So Caroline, let's start off by talking a little bit about your job. What is it that you do?
Sure. So I'm one of the academic advisors within the Student Athlete Success Center in UVM Athletics. So our role, I'm one of a number of different academic advisors there. Our role is really multifaceted, but we're surrounding just support of the student athletes while they're at UVM. So on the one hand, we have all these pieces surrounding NCAA compliance that we have to be considering. We support our compliance team in that, and we're really looking at the academic rules that the students need to adhere to during their time. But then beyond that, we're also supporting our student athletes with their current curriculum needs, academic support, and then also really focused on personal and professional development for student athletes while they're at UVM.
Big job.
Yes, very multifaceted, and it's really, I think, kind of unique. The students really everyone has a different relationship with us, and we try to be really individualized in how we support each student athlete.
Terrific. Well, over the past 20 years or so, the phrase financial literacy has become part of our vocabulary. But Cindy, what exactly does financial literacy mean?
Financial literacy really is understanding how to manage your money and what money is, how to budget, how to manage your debt, and actually how to save, because one of the most important things about money management is saving, either saving for a rainy day, like if unexpected expenses, or saving for retirement. So it's really understanding how money works.
And so there's quite a few benefits that come from being financially literate. Cindy, why don't you start talking about a few, and then Caroline jump in and add.
Sure. Well, one of them is understanding what credit scores mean, because if you understand what your credit score is, it does affect how much you can borrow, if you want to borrow for maybe a home or a car. It does affect also, depending on your credit score, what kind of interest rate you'll get. So if you're paying higher interest rate, you're going to be paying more money. So that way, if you're knowledgeable about what a credit score and the consequences of lower credit scores, you will be able to save money if you can keep those credit scores up and understand that.
And so what does a credit score mean, and how do you build a credit score?
It's from the different entities like Equifax and other entities that when you get loans, you have different scores. So different loans and different amounts that you borrow, whether you have, what kind of credit lines do you have on your Visa cards? Do you have them high or you have them low? It's different scores for different things. Are you paying on time?
That's a big one.
So that's a big one. So are you paying on time? So that's reflective in a score. And so when you go to get some sort of credit, the entities look at those scores to see, okay, what kind of risk are we taking to give this person a loan?
And so what would you add to that, Caroline?
Really, I think these are really foundational financial topics, but just to underscore that most students aren't really getting exposure to this. So in terms of the benefits, I think the benefits are massive. If they're not learning about it at any point, they don't know they exist. So the starting point really is the education and the exposure just around these basic financial topics.
Do you think it's more difficult today to be financially literate than, say, in our grandparents' generation?
I think it's probably easier today. The reason I say that is because there's a lot of resources, the internet, and people can search different things on the internet, where in the past my grandparents could not do that. It wasn't existing. So I think in that respect, there's opportunity for people can search and look for information. In the past they couldn't.
Okay. Well, recently the two of you worked together. It was a collaboration involving UVM student athletes. And so what did you do? Maybe Caroline, you can start off talking about that.
Yeah, so this is a partnership that we actually started last year, and we kind of grew upon it this year because we thought it was such a beneficial program to offer students. So our partnership really was kind of looking at two different things. So as an educator, my goal is to support student athletes with their current needs, but then also really to prepare them for life after graduation as well. And as I mentioned before, most students aren't getting exposure to basic topics in financial literacy when they're in college. And that's not different at UVM, but that's not a problem that's unique to UVM. Really, the only students who are getting maybe some financial literacy exposure or personal finances are in the business school, and that's not it's not every student at UVM. So in partnering with New England Federal Credit Union, we were looking at trying to give students broad exposure to financial topics, really just kind of baseline introductory information, get them interested, and really to show them that finances don't have to be wildly complicated. In fact, just a little bit of information about a couple topics can really put you ahead. And then we had this second goal of having more targeted education and providing really specific skills to meet students where they are with their current spending and saving needs.
And so I guess it's a two-part series that you were trying to accomplish.
Right. Yeah, part one was really making the cut, was really more budgeting and the foundations and the importance of budgeting and understanding what you're spending every day and create some saving habits. The second part of that was playing to win, and that was really geared towards more seniors and really understanding when you get a job offer. How do you read that job offer letter? What does that mean? What do the benefits mean? And more importantly, how does that work in my daily life? And what we did was going into that, it was whether it was New York, Boston, or Vermont. And so they had to understand that what that means within those job offers. And then they had a life simulation game. They had to actually go and use that money and spend it and understand how that works. And knowing that after they were done with that, and it was like real life simulation and real life understanding, what have I just done? They may have overspent. Or they might have said, you know what, I really need to stay in this location because I thought it was going to be great to go to this area, and it really isn't because there was consequences.
Okay, let's talk a little bit more about part one of this two-part series, Making the Cut, Successful Budgeting and Strategies. These are for the younger students.
Yes.
And so what exactly did they learn?
Yeah, well, I'll start by saying we didn't turn anyone away from either session. I'd say we marketed the first session more towards our underclassmen, just because we're always very considerate about all of the different stressors they have going on in their life. And what I don't want to do is tell an underclassman they have to be worrying about where they're living after graduation and their job offer. So it was really just geared towards, let's get you a basic understanding. I'll let Cindy jump into kind of specific topics that we covered.
Yeah, so some of the things were understanding your spending habits. What are you spending on a daily basis? And start tracking that and understand what you're spending. Because then that becomes a reality and you're like, wait a minute, I just spent this much money on coffee for the week. I can do something a little different. I can do something a little different and save this rather than spending it on coffee. I can do something a little different. Things like that, like understanding your spending habits and budgeting and the importance of a budget.
And also to start saving early, I would imagine.
Yes. Start saving early and understanding not only saving early, but once you get a job, especially with the other session, take advantage of your employer's 401ks because that's another way to save as little as you might say, I don't have a lot of money to do that initially, but every little bit helps over time because it does compound the interest.
Yeah, I was going to say compounding interest is definitely one of the topics that we looked at, both from the negative aspect of what happens if you fail to pay off a credit card bill and you're carrying a balance and the serious negative impacts that can have, but then also the flip side, which is the really positive, compounding interest. I mean, it's sort of magical when you look at how much money can grow over the course of 40 years. So showing to students that even if you put away just a little bit now at age 21,
and you don't touch it.
And you don't touch it. Exactly, the most important part, you don't touch it. That can be worth a substantially larger amount when you're ready to take it out in retirement. And I think it's really empowering as a student to see it laid out. You can see a chart and see how much it grows. And I think there's so many things you're being told about how finances are challenging, you're never going to make enough money, thinking about how could you ever afford a house. And when you can see these little steps that you can take at the beginning to really make those dreams more attainable, I think it's really empowering for a student.
It's really about forming habits too.
It's a habit. And also, we demonstrated, you borrow money on Visa, you charge, how long that's going to take you to pay off at a minimum payment. And that's eye-opening.
And how much that money is going to cost you.
And how much it's going to cost you at the end. So it was very eye-opening to some of the students on that one because it was like, wow, I don't know if I want to put that on a Visa card and, pay that off, pay it off with just minimum payments.
Right, if you can't afford to pay for it to begin with, putting it on a credit card isn't going to help.
Right.
And so talk a little bit about starting a career, because when you graduate from college, you think, well, I'll get a job, but you don't stop to think about, well, where should I really be living? Can I afford to take this job, which sounds good on paper, but how much are apartments? Am I going to have one roommate, 5 roommates?
Yeah, so this is really what we were looking at with our second session. So Cindy mentioned it was really a simulation. So students were offered, they were given an offer letter in a specific city, and then they had to go around the room and figure out, in terms of, groceries and picking an apartment and looking at their offer letter, figuring out if they could sustain their lifestyle in this city with this new job. And in terms of the things that they're thinking about, what we're really trying to show them is that there's a big difference between your initial offer letter, which may look very appealing or not, depending on what you get, but could look very appealing in terms of just your flat rate number. But there's so many different things you have to think about before you say, yes, I'm going to accept this offer and it's going to be a good fit for me for where I want to live. You have to think about your living expenses. You have to think about grocery bills. Maybe you're buying a car. Maybe you're trying to pay off a car. You're looking at the taxes that you have to take out of your salary. I think that's sometimes things students don't think about. If you're taking out 25 to 30% just off the bat of this offer letter, all of a sudden that apartment that was $1,200 a month that you thought you could afford isn't really going to fit with your budget anymore. So really giving them the information about all the different pieces that go into just covering your basic living expenses, and then empowering them to say, okay, if this is your offer letter, now you make the decisions about where you're going to live, what quality of food you're going to buy. We had them look at that. Are you shopping at Whole Foods, or are you shopping at
is it
a discount place? Yeah. Anything else you'd like to add?
Yeah, I think the offer letter too is understanding how your benefits are structured, and especially your health care.
And why that's so important. And when you're really 22 years old, you don't really think that you're ever going to get sick.
Right? That's okay.
Yeah, so that was also something we reviewed, because that's a big piece of your job offer is your benefits. And if you're not getting a really good package for health care, you're going to have to add that to your monthly expenses.
And there are some job offers, too, that offer even more than you might think as far as matching funds, 401k funds, and also even some student loan help.
Yeah, the 401k or a 403b, depending on what type of company or institution you're at, that was something that I think we really tried to drill home, because the reality is your employer match is really just about the only free money you're ever going to get in the world. And that's not a concept I think that every student has had exposure to. So telling them that you should at least be putting in the minimum and explaining to them why that's so important and the power that could have over the long term.
And then you can really look at what the real offer is and go back to the employer and say, I can't afford to take this job. It's going to have to be $20,000 more.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right. Because if you understand, especially depending on what location you would like to live, you really have to understand the living expenses within those different locations, because that's going to dictate, how well you want to live. You need to understand, this is how I want to live. So you need to make that decision, because of that. The income may not be enough to be where you want to be.
So Caroline, what kind of comments and feedback have you gotten from the students who've gone through these courses?
Yeah, we got a lot of really positive feedback, which was exciting, again, as an educator to see, because you put a lot of energy into these sessions. The biggest hurdle is always getting students to show up, because they're so busy, they're pulled in 1,000 different directions. We usually try to incentivize them with some food, which can help. But in talking with students after each session, the overwhelming feedback was really positive. And I actually think, I wasn't surprised by that, but what's interesting is that you have students who are coming into these sessions with such a range of pre-existing knowledge about the topics based on the questions that we fielded during the sessions. You had some students who really actually had a pretty strong basic understanding, and they had some really targeted questions they wanted answers to about maybe their Roth IRA that they had already started. And then you had students who, have never had a credit card and wanted to understand how they could get a safe credit card option for them and build their credit. So we had a wide range and everything in between, and regardless of where a student was on that spectrum, everybody was able to take something away. And I actually had students reach out to me afterwards in person via email saying, it was so exciting, I want to get some more information. Do you have a book you'd recommend? And one of the coaches actually told us that after one of their students attended the session, they had purchased an Investing for Dummies book, and they saw them reading it on the bus on the way to a game, which is exactly what our goal was with this. We want to educate students, we want to expose them to it, and then by showing them that it doesn't have to be really complicated or scary, hopefully you can generate some interest around the topic, which it seems like we have.
And the state of Vermont is actually in the process of trying to require more financial literacy for kids in school. Could you talk a little bit about some other examples of educational opportunities for anybody who might be watching, who might be interested?
NEFCU offers what we call its Mad City Money, and it's for actually high school students, and it is another life simulation game where they have a profile, they understand what they are, and they have to go shopping and live. So it's the same sort of thing, because we find that people are learning, instead of giving them lecture about finances, they live it, basically. So they learn better that way, I think. We also do things with CVOEO. They have a program called Growing Money, which is a really great program. And Champlain College does some really good financial education with students there.
An important topic. I want to thank you both for joining me today.
Sure.
That's our program for today. I'm Judy Simpson. I'll see you again next time on Across the Fence.